our team and our partners at IEDC. And this is only possible due to the sponsors of our event, as well as the hard work of the team members that you're going to see throughout the next couple of days. You'll know most of them because they will be wearing these lovely t-shirts. Sarah, if you'd like to stand up and give us a good model, because I know you'll appreciate that later.
I worked really hard on this outfit.
As you can see, we've tried to treat this event like one that is meant to include everyone, get you excited about what we're going to accomplish in the next couple of days, as well as create an environment where you feel comfortable sharing and being open. So first, I'd like to start out with a few housekeeping items because those are always the fun things to go through. I've heard that there's a lot of chatter about where the restrooms are. So the restrooms are directly outside these doors and to your left. If you need an exit, you might have noticed that there is a few doors in the back of this room, but there are also doors on either side of the building. So if a fire alarm should go off, someone really wants to clear the room, those are exits on either side of the building. You can gather in the parking lot to the front for your safety, and we'll have lists and we'll be able to do a head count. But for those of you that are here today, thank you for respecting the distances of others. Everyone has masks. We welcome you to wear them. We want you to take this at your own comfort level. We really understand that people have different places where they're at, different priorities and policies for their own companies. So please be sure to do what's right for you and your space. If at any time you are uncomfortable being in a space, we have everything on Zoom, live and recorded. So today you might have heard that recording sound as we got started. That's because we have people attending via Zoom, and we want people to feel like they can attend and participate at that level. Now, later today and tomorrow afternoon, there will be facilitated work sessions. Those are not recorded. And we're doing that very deliberately. We want you to be able to speak openly and freely. We want you to be able to have candid conversations about what's a priority for you. So please feel free to have engaging conversations, be challenging to each other. That is our goal. So if you've had the chance to read my letter, which is in all of your books, I know you're just dying to do that, you will have noted that one of the most important things for me is that I want to challenge you. I want you to feel uncomfortable. I want to present information today that hopefully you haven't heard before. Things that you want to take away and work on in our community. Because you're here today to help us decide the future of Itasca County. No, we are not playing God. No, we're not going to decide every single step along the way in the next 10 years. But we have a chance with the speakers, with the community members that are attending to make a real difference in where we're going and how we get there. So please take time to be candid, share with the people in the room, talk about what concerns you, and be sure to share that with my team as well. I mentioned this to a couple of people. If you are uncomfortable in any space and there's comments that you feel are not valid and you really want someone to share that for you, come to one of us. We will be your voice. We won't say who told us, but we will be your voice and try to ensure that people are heard at this event, whether it comes from you or through us. So please be candid, please be open, and have a great time. This is meant to be a lot of fun. As you can see, we're a fun crew. I mean, most of us, I don't know if we can say Matt is, but I won't call any names out. Most of us are really fun. Most of us have a tremendous passion for this community. And I know that passion is shared by most of you in the room. So please help me in welcoming our next speaker, Bart Johnson, who's going to be talking a little bit about our goals as an organization briefly. And we'll talk about the next speaker for the day. Bart?
Well, thanks, Tamara. I went from doing a warm welcome to a speaker, but I'll keep it on the warm welcome side. My name is Bart Johnson. I'm the board chair for IEDC, and my day job is I'm the provost at Itasca Community College. And just a couple things. First of all, I want to say thank you to all of you. I assume yesterday you had a hectic day, just like I did, the idea of trying to get things cleared out at work so that you can take the time to be here today and keep your organizations running. So to all of you, I want to say thank you for this investment of time preparing for these 2 days and making these 2 days available. I truly appreciate it, along with all of our communities. Also, just want to thank all the speakers and sponsors. I know there's been a lot of prepping for this. Really looking forward to what's going to be shared, but also those that sponsored to make this day happen. And the last thank you just to Tamara and the entire IEDC staff 9 months. How long have we been talking about this now?
A while. At least 10 months.
At least 10 months. Looking forward to this day that we could convene and come together. And if you could just, if everyone could join me in giving them a round of applause. So just a couple of comments and we'll get to our first speaker here, because I'm not here to really be a speaker, but I think, why are we here? I was just trying to think about, why does this all come together? Why do people commit the time? And I think if it comes down to it, we care about our communities. If we look at the greater Itasca County area, our region, all of you are leaders in different aspects and really care. And that's the reason we make the choice to be here and invest the time. For myself, I'm a fourth generation Itasca County resident. To me, this is a lot about how do you make sure that this county and the greater region are prepared to be a good place to live for the next generation, to continue on the legacy of the opportunities that we've had in our region. And that comes down to a couple of things. First of all, it's just quality of life in our communities. I got the disadvantage. I know I get distracted by seeing Sugar Lake out the back window when you're looking this way. But there's so many things that make this a great region to live. It's the outdoors, it's the strength of our communities, it's the networks that exist to really have a lot of opportunities. But when it comes down to it, quality jobs really make a difference. And people being able to not only take advantage of the quality of life that's here, but actually build that quality of life. And to do that, we need an economy that works for everyone, but also works to move our economy forward. We've got some great industries that we need to continue to focus on and strengthen. I'm really excited for the wood product industry. There's the first time ever, it seems like there's exciting news coming down the line with work, with a new company coming in, and that matters. At the same time, if we need to look towards the future as well, when we're in the midst of the next industrial revolution, looking at the digital economy, and are we really preparing as a county and as a region to best take advantage of that? Not only to have good economic activity, but as we speak about the next generation of our communities and our workforce, they are more and more looking at that direction for career opportunities. I'm going with my son on a college visit on Friday, and my background's in mechanical engineering, and I love it. My oldest son thought mechanical engineering was the best thing in the world, but he's like, Dad, I really like programming and computer science. So I'm not going to argue with him. That's not a bad direction for him to be going right now. But the reality is he's looking at much more of a digital future for his workforce, and he's excited about that. And it's caused me to ask the question, what type of work opportunities exist back in this region if that's something he wants to do with his life? So as much as it's about strengthening our current economy, making sure that's strong and healthy, it's also preparing as a county, as a region for the future workforce and workforce opportunities so that we can attract that talent to come back, to stay, because we need that talent, we need those people to come back to keeping our communities healthy and vibrant. So thank you for everybody being here. I'm excited for what will come out of today and view it as just the start of a good mark in the history of this county, this region of leaders coming together to help moving things forward. And I know there's other conversations taken across the region similar to this, but I'm excited to be here today to do that. So with that, ask Ben Dinucci, this District 5 County Commissioner, to come up and introduce our true first speaker today.
Well, hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Dinucci. I'm from Nashwauk. I'm a small business owner, and I have had the privilege to serve as Itasca County Commissioner in District 5 for the last 4 years. And people ask me all the time to talk about my experience as county commissioner, and working in county government, and I kind of get the feeling like they want me to say something negative or complain, but I never do. I love being a part of county government. County government is nimble and effective. Like to say, county government gets the job done. We have a plan for repairing and funding the maintenance and creation of all the roads in the county. We have, and I'm proud to say, for the last 3 years, we have had a 0% levy increase. And again, this year we set our levy increase at 0%, which was a lot of work, but just shows the financial stewardship that county government takes in its work. And it's a balance, because at the same time, we still made investments in things like broadband. We know we can do better at broadband. And at Itasca County, we're done talking about it. It's time for action. We put our money where our mouth is, we write the checks, put the fiber in the ground. So it's just really a pleasure to be a part of an effective team and to partner with effective partners such as the IEDC. There's such a talented team at the IEDC. They are a tremendous resource for our communities, and they've been grinding to put this summit together. I know they've been working hard, long hours, and I'm excited to be here today with all of you. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Nick Tasler. Nick is an internationally acclaimed thought leader, organizational psychologist, and #1 best-selling author. He has helped tens of thousands of leaders apply a simple decision for transforming seasons of change into periods of unprecedented growth at the world's most respected organizations, ranging from United Health, Microsoft, JP Morgan Chase, to the Wharton School, Yale University, and more. Nick is also a leadership columnist for the Harvard Business Review. His work has been featured by the New York Times, NPR, the BBC, NBC, CBS, and other leading media outlets all around the world, such as the Scenic Range News Forum.
Not yet.
I'm glad you laughed at that, because if I have to explain the joke, it's not as funny. Nomadic by nature, Nick and his wife and their 4 kids live in lots of places. Sometimes Minnesota, sometimes Florida, currently Puerto Rico. Please welcome Nick Tasler.
I want to start out this morning with a question. Is change hard? Is change hard? Yes? No?
Yeah.
Sometimes? Yeah? Because I know that you guys have been going through a lot of change in Itasca County lately, right? I mean, we've got the on again, off again relationship with the pandemic that all of us have. We've got demographic shifts in your communities. We've got the closing down maybe of some of the previous generation's economic pillars and the opening up of some of the next generation's economic pillars. And on top of that, you're all people, aren't you? Human beings who've probably experienced some personal changes. I mean, think about in the last 5 to 10 years, raise your hand if you've experienced a job change, a community change, a house change, an eating habit change, a lifestyle change, a change in the number of people or pets living under your roof. I mean, that's a lot of change, right? And yet, in spite of all that change, in spite of the fact that change is so hard, here you all are today, living, breathing, learning new skills, new technologies, taking excellent care of your team members and your customers, growing your careers, even occasionally smiling and laughing, right? And I guess, the thing I'm trying to wrap my head around is, if change is so hard, how do you explain those results? Well, I think it's time that we rethink the way that we think about change, the way that we talk about change. I spent my entire career as an organizational psychologist studying change, the link between change and growth, between change and the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations, communities. And even before that, before I even began my career, while growing up, I changed homes 11 different times. Yeah, my loving yet highly impulsive mom and dad are a topic for another time, probably over a drink. But in all my research as an organizational psychologist, in all my experience as a parent, as a business owner, as a kid who experienced, I would argue, more than my fair share of change growing up, what I've concluded is that change is hard, only in the same way that raising kids or running a marathon is hard. The fact that it requires effort does not negate the fact that most people who commit to doing it eventually succeed. And that's because growing and adapting in response to change is the rule of human existence. It is not the exception. Let me say that again. Successfully adapting and growing in response to the changes in our life is the rule of human existence. It is not the exception. So no matter what you've heard, no matter what you've read, no matter what that little voice inside your head and my head likes to whisper in our ears sometimes, growing in response to change is the one thing that every single person in this room has been doing literally since the day you squirmed out of your mother's womb. How do you like that visual to help your breakfast settle? But seriously, I mean, think about it. Think about an achievement that you're most proud of in your life as a leader, as a parent, as a student, an athlete, a musician. Okay, you got one in mind? I can almost guarantee that in every single one of these instances, if we were to trace the timeline of that achievement, we would find that it was immediately preceded by a season of change and uncertainty and adversity. I mean, the year before you made All-State, you weren't even sure if you were going to make the starting lineup, which is what caused you to double your effort, which doubled your skills, which led to the big achievement. That process improvement that you enjoy in your office now is the obviously right way to do things, almost certainly took root during a previous season of change and uncertainty, which inspired somebody on your team to think differently about the way things had always been done, which is what led to the improvement and the innovation. So now let's bring that to bear on the current situation. And what if all that nervous energy, that occasional pit in your stomach wakes you up in the middle of the night sometimes? What if all that nervous energy is not actually a symptom of your struggles, but is really a sign that you are right on the cusp of your next big achievement? What if? So today, my goal, my mission is to help you walk out these doors this morning ready, not just prepared, but actually excited to turn the corner from merely surviving this season of change to thriving because of this season of change. Not in spite of, because of this season of change. You know the way we're going to do that? Well, it's the same way that you've been doing it your whole life. The same way that you've been bridging the gap between today's changes and tomorrow's achievements your entire life. One decision at a time. One decision at a time. Let's play a game right now. Should we do that? Sure. That sound good? Okay, I'm gonna need 6 volunteers for this game. So if you're feeling bold, if you feel like today's the day where you want your 15 minutes of fame, I want 6 people to come up to the front of the room here. There's one. Thank you, thank you.
I knew that was coming.
Thank you so much. All right, come on up here. Thank you, sir.
I'm here because you.
Double duty today. Thank you. 3 more. Thanks, Brian.
Sure.
2 more. I got all day. I don't know about you guys.
Shannon Bernolka.
I promise
Oh my God.
it's not going to be very embarrassing. Just 2. Okay. We can have 3 more. That's all right.
Oh, Shannon. Oh, you're already halfway.
Oh, perfect. Okay. So let's have you 3 come stand behind this table. You 3 come stand behind that table. Just right there. Now, here's what we're going to do. You guys are going to have You're going to have 1 minute to build as high of a tower as you can. Okay? Now, the rest of you, your job is to observe the dynamic. And you can also play a little bit of a consultative role. If you think that there's something they could be doing better, feel free to shout it out. If you just want to cheer and hoot and holler and give them encouragement, you can do that too. But I want you to pay attention to the dynamic you see, okay? All right, so 1 minute, build as high of a tower as you can. Hold on. On your marks. Get set. Go.
Okay.
'Cause I have no idea what the rules are.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
What?
I just got word there's some changes in the regulatory environment. So I don't know, I'll have to ask Ben. I'm not sure where it came from. So here's what you have to do now.
MPCA out.
I don't even know what that is, but
You're out of here.
so here's what we're gonna, now you have to put a cup of water on top of your tower. You have to balance a cup of water on your tower, okay? So you have 20 more seconds. Go ahead, continue.
So we'll get more.
It is good more.
10 seconds.
Just bring water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5, 4, and time. Very nice, very nice. Well done, team. Well done. Big round of applause once again. Thank you. Okay, you guys can go ahead and sit down now. Thank you so much. All right. We have a winner. We have a winner. Not that we're competitive, but apparently we need a winner. Okay, so what did you guys observe? Shout it out, anything. It was a good one. That was very clever. What did you observe?
Thinking outside the box.
Thinking outside the box, okay? In what way? Putting the stool, okay? Collaboration, okay?
The mechanical engineer studying the blocks as the instructions were being read or.
Did it pay off?
They didn't win, but they built the next tower.
They did build the next tower. A structurally sound tower, right? What else?
Trying to get away with it.
What else? Do you think they could have done anything differently to build a higher tower?
Better materials.
Better, right? But they worked with what they had, right? And then creatively used some other things. Anything else?
They could have
Work together. Tell me about that. Yes, they could have. I didn't say that the two teams couldn't combine their blocks, right? So we have like collaboration plus collaboration. Good point. Yeah. That's right. That's right. Didn't let distractions. And there was a lot of useless junk up there, wasn't there, teams? So they very quickly sifted through the crap and got to the things that could actually help you build the tower, right? Okay. Anything else?
They dealt with the barrier of the difference between the water and the.
That's right. Very quickly rethought what they needed to do and adapted, just like we know we can, right? Just like we've been doing our whole lives. So we saw all these things, and ultimately what we saw is two groups of smart, talented people coming together to build something great in spite of limited resources, in spite of limited time, in spite of distractions, coming together to build something great. And the way they did that was one decision at a time. See, decisions are the most basic building blocks of growth and development and adaptation in our teams and our organizations, not to mention in our personal lives, in our families, our schools, our communities. And the more strategically and courageously we stack our blocks, the faster and more effectively our team members and our communities are going to be able to step out of yesterday's shadows and start chasing tomorrow's big dreams once again. Okay, so I want to share with you a simple decision framework in a few minutes. But before we get into that, I need to talk a few more minutes about your mindset. You see, because this framework that I'm going to share with you, it's really just a vehicle. And like any vehicle, the performance of that vehicle is either going to be boosted or burdened by the mindset of that vehicle's driver. It's like you can give me a new high-powered sports car, a brand new Maserati, and I wouldn't even come close to tapping its full potential. Why? Because I have 4 kids under the age of 13, which means I have the mindset of a minivan driver, which I am. In fact, I'm the proud owner of not just 1, but 2 minivans. And if you're keeping score at home, that's actually lame squared. So let's talk a little bit about that mindset. Do you know what transformed Isaac Newton from an undistinguished math student into one of the greatest scientists in human civilization? Was it a pay raise? Was it a new whiz-bang piece of technology? Was it maybe a blissful romance? You know, kind of like a Shakespeare in Love sort of thing? Nope. It was an outbreak of the bubonic plague. No joke. During a plague epidemic sweeping across Europe in 1665, Newton gets sent home from university after all classes have been canceled. Sound familiar to anybody? And one day he's sitting in his backyard and he sees an apple fall from a tree, and voila. Just like that, the idea that would become the theory of gravity is born. And just for good measure, during that same season of quarantine and epidemic, Newton also invented calculus, revolutionized the telescope, and binge watched every season of The Office on Netflix. Never before and never again would Isaac Newton produce such an explosion of innovative work. And that is not a coincidence. Modern neuroscience shows that strange and unexpected changes in our external environment act like an alarm clock that wakes up creative superpowers in our brain that most of us didn't even know that we had. It works like this. In normal times, our brains work on default mode. So we wake up, we get ready for work, we go to the office, we take the kids to school, we go to the gym, we go to the grocery store, we see friends, we take the kids to soccer practice. We follow a routine. But all of a sudden, when we're not allowed to go to work anymore, or when we start having to go to the grocery store feeling like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, or all of a sudden we can't make sense out of how someone slurping down a bowl of bat soup halfway around the world suddenly made my neighborhood resemble the set of a zombie apocalypse movie. I mean, this is not political commentary. I want to tell you this, like, it's disorienting. These events have been disorienting for all of us, regardless of how you feel about one way or the other. Let me give you a personal example. So I live in Puerto Rico now, and 2 months before the pandemic started, we had earthquakes where I live. And so all of a sudden, there was one day in about April of 2020, when we got a text message on our phone. My wife and I got a text message on our phones that said, in Spanish, mind you, in Spanish, if you have to run out of the house because of an earthquake, don't forget your mask. I was like, what is going on? I mean, where am I, right? It's so disorienting. And our brains start functioning in a different way when that happens, when these disorienting events take place. Now, and the reason why is basic evolution. See, it's like our cave-dwelling ancestors, in order to have survived out on the savannas, every rustling in the bushes, every abnormally long dry season, every change in their external environment demanded an immediate creative response. And here's the cool thing about it. The exact same creative superpowers that were unleashed in Isaac Newton's brain that transformed him from an undistinguished math student into a world leader in his field. Those exact same creative superpowers have been awoken in your brains too. In yours, in yours, and yours, in all of our brains. For the rest of his life, Isaac Newton referred to that year of quarantine, that year of epidemic, as his year of wonders. Yeah, you heard me correctly. The exact same time period that everybody else in the world called the Great Plague, not just your average, ordinary, run-of-the-mill plague, but the Great Plague. Isaac Newton called his year of wonders. What if this is your year of wonders? What if this is the time period that your future self will look back on 10 or 15 years down the road and say, that was the season when I discovered the growth potential that I didn't even know I had, that I didn't know my team had, that I didn't know my community, my county had? What if this is the season that you look back and say, that was when I began the transition from the competent manager I had always been into the transformational leader that I eventually became? All those little insights that you've had over the last 18 months about how, something as simple as like a game night can reinvigorate the relationship with your kids and your family, or about how driving a little less and zooming a little bit more can make you twice as productive every day, or about how much quality of life your community has to offer to a world of remote workers. All those little insights, those are the seeds of transformation that have been planted during this season of change. And do you know the way in which you're going to grow and harvest those seeds? One decision at a time. One decision at a time. I want to get into this framework now, this three-part framework. And the first part of the framework is, slides aren't working here. First part of the framework is to check your pulse. There we go. Check your pulse. Now, I'm going to need to do another demonstration here to illustrate what I mean, but don't worry, nobody has to come up to the front of the room this time. But I do need all of you to stand up, okay? So go ahead and stand up. Now, I'm going to make a few statements, and every time you hear a statement you agree with, I want you to turn and face me wherever I am in the room, okay? All right. It would really help our community grow if we focused on attracting new businesses, okay? If you agree with that, turn and face me, okay? It would really help our community grow this year if we focused on supporting and growing existing businesses, okay? It would really help our community grow this year if we focused on reducing our costs. Okay? It would really help our community grow this year if we focused on creating more process improvements in our department, in our organization. It would really help our community grow this year if we focused on upskilling our local workforce. It would really help us grow our community this year if we focused on increasing the efficiency of our local government and the agility. Not that it isn't already super agile, Ben. Okay, now, which direction did you move in? Circle. Thank you for being good sports. You can all sit down now. What do you suppose the point of this little exercise is?
Can't do it all at once.
Can't do it all at once, right? I mean, you can make a sound, rational case for pursuing any one of these directions this year. But the trouble with having 6 primary directions is that it's approximately 5 too many if you actually want to get somewhere. If you really want to build momentum and get people excited and score quick wins to go in this new direction. That's why one of the quickest ways to accelerate growth is to decide of all the things we could focus on, what's going to be the number one thing that we're going to focus on. And I call that number one thing your decision pulse, your decision pulse. So go ahead and find your pulse. See if you can find your pulse. Certainly hope you can. We're in trouble if you can't. You can actually feel the lifeblood flowing through your body, coursing through your veins right now. Of all the important things happening in your body, this is the thing that is providing the fuel and the oxygen to everything else that you want to have happen, everything else that needs to happen. And the same is true with your decision pulse. A few years ago, the founder and chairman of Starbucks Coffee Company, Howard Schultz, walked into one of his favorite and oldest stores in downtown Seattle. And the first thing he noticed when he walked in the door was not the scent of freshly brewed coffee. It was the stench of burnt cheddar cheese. Cheese that had melted off one breakfast sandwich, landed on the oven grates, and then continued to burn over and over and over again with every new sandwich that was sold and served that day. Now for Schultz, this was akin to blasphemy. It was the ultimate indicator of how Starbucks had lost its way as the enterprise who brought the romance of Italian espresso bars to the rest of the world. Where's the romance of burnt cheese? Is the question Schultz is asking. So he went and he tracked down the store manager to ask her about the smell, what's going on? And when he found her, she frankly was a little bit confused. And she said with no small hint of pride in her voice, after thinking about it for a few seconds, Howard, we've already far surpassed our sales goals for breakfast sandwiches. And that's when the light bulb switched on for Schultz. That was the moment when he saw the falling apple. See, he realized that in the previous months, he'd been telling everybody that the way in which Starbucks is going to get off this plateau that they had landed on and back on the path to grow is we need to reassert our coffee authority. Reassert our coffee authority. That's what he's telling anybody who would listen. We're going to reassert our coffee authority. What he realized, though, in that conversation is that he is the leader. Every time he said, reassert our coffee authority, what everyone else was hearing was, hit your numbers. See, he's saying, reassert our coffee authority. What they're hearing is, we're in trouble, so hit your numbers. See, they were, when challenged with the challenge to grow more, they were doing what all of us instinctively do, which is trying to do more. We think we have to grow more, so we try to do more. So they were adding anything they could think of to their stores to increase their same store sales, like stuffed animals, DVD movies, calendars, all kinds of food items, things that had nothing to do with coffee. They were taking what I call a growth by addition approach. What Schultz realized is that what they really needed was a growth by decision approach. So a few months later, after that conversation, he decided to take one of the company's most popular and profitable products, breakfast sandwiches, and he pulled them from the shelves of all 16,000 Starbucks stores around the world. Wall Street analysts thought he had lost his mind. But as leaders yourselves, how do you think that instant burst of clarity impacted the people at Starbucks? It was like a shock to the system. All of a sudden, employees and managers all throughout Starbucks started seeing falling apples. Now that the breakfast sandwiches had been cleared from their vision, they could finally see the true source of their growth. So over the next 18 months, one decision at a time, Starbucks unleashed a torrent of coffee-based innovations, which brought them back to their best year ever, 4 years in a row. So I guess what I wonder right now is, what are your breakfast sandwiches?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Hi, Adrienne. I have just a few minutes. Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, this is a first. This is a first. What are your breakfast sandwiches? Right? as individuals, as teams, as organizations, as communities, we all have breakfast sandwiches. Right? We all have burnt cheese distracting us, throwing us off the scent of our greatest growth potential. And that's why decisions are such powerful catalysts for growth, because decisions delete distractions. Decisions delete distractions. Do you know what the Latin root of the word decide means? Well, I'll give you a hint. Here's the other English words that share the same Latin root as decide. Homicide, suicide, genocide, pesticide, herbicide. What do all these words have in common?
Eliminate something.
That's right. They all come from the same Latin root word that means to cut or to kill. When you put that in the context of decide, I think it gives us a whole new understanding about what it actually means to make a decision. See, we often talk about decisions in terms of what it is that we're going to do, right? We decided to marry this person. We decided to take this job. We decided to hire this person. We decided to pursue this strategy. And we always talk about what it is that we decided to do. But at its core, at its essence, making a decision is actually much less about what we decided to do. And it's about all the other possible priorities that we decided to cut, to kill, to tweak, to deprioritize, to pivot away from, to put on the back burner, even if only temporarily, so that we can focus our energy on rallying around the thing that's going to make the most disproportionate impact on our success at this moment in time. I was working with a big agribusiness company doing a strategy workshop for them a little while ago, and they had determined throughout the course of the conversation that their decision pulse was going to be maximizing production capacity. So they were already the biggest player in their industry, but they realized that they were leaving a lot of unmet demand on the table, not because they didn't have the customers that wanted the product, but because their two largest production facilities, one in North Dakota and one in South America, were only operating at well below their maximum production capacity. And they had been for the past 3 or 4 years. So they determined that, our pulse for right now is we're going to get those two production facilities back up to maximum capacity. But I like to believe in the telling of the Starbucks story, which I told to them earlier, the division president had a bit of a falling apple moment, an insight, because she then said, hold on though, deciding to focus on maximized production capacity is not actually a true decision yet, is it? So in addition to making that our decision pulse, what we're also going to do is take the supply chain efficiency project and the quality assurance initiative, and we're going to put those on hold until we get these two facilities back up to maximum capacity, so that we can marshal all available resources, time, creativity, and people power to solving this problem first. After a few months, when we get that back on track, then we'll redivert our energy back over to these, and we can all as a team stay aligned, focused on the same key problem, right? And it's the same way with Starbucks and the breakfast sandwiches. How many of you have been to a Starbucks lately in the last 5 years? Have you noticed that Starbucks still sells breakfast sandwiches?
Yes.
Yeah, that's because 9 months after they pulled breakfast sandwiches from the shelves, the R&D team had some falling apples. They saw some falling apples, some moments of insight and inspiration. And they actually determined that if they tweaked the toaster ovens a little bit, and they tweaked some of the ingredients in the breakfast sandwiches, they could still serve breakfast sandwiches without them ever again distracting the company and the customers from coffee. It would complement the coffee rather than taking attention away from it, right? So when we talk about cutting and killing, it only has to be temporary. It's not about what's good or bad, what's right or wrong. It's what are we going to focus on right now? So, the example for you guys, maybe is mining good or bad for Itasca County? Well, I don't know, it depends. If it's making us complacent and it's making us overly fixated on trying to defend and hold on to the glory days of yesteryear, and it's preventing future growth, then it might be a breakfast sandwich. However, if it's being leveraged to create innovations in mining and beyond, and to facilitate and support the rest of the new businesses that are coming into town, Then it could be a complementary factor. It could be supporting future growth. So it's not about what's good or bad. It's what are we going to focus on and how is everything working toward this one goal, okay, in this period of time. All right, so after you've checked your pulse, there's another step in the process. And I want to tell you, give you another example here. When Angela Ahrendts took over as CEO of Burberry, she recalls being stunned at her very first strategic planning session when all the company's leaders had flown into London into what she describes as classic British weather, gray and damp. And as they all filed into the conference room, into the meeting, she noticed that not a single one of the 60+ leaders in attendance was wearing a trench coat. The very thing that made Thomas Burberry's classically British company a global fashion icon ever since the day he designed that piece of outerwear to keep British soldiers warm and dry in the trenches of World War I. So Ahrendts and her team then decided to double down on their heritage, their Britishness. And in the 5 years after making trench coats, Burberry's decision pulse, they tripled their headcount while doubling both sales and profits. Now, what I think is most fascinating about Angela Ahrendts' decision to focus on Burberry's British heritage, on their Britishness, is that Angela Ahrendts is not British. She's from Indiana. But it often works that way, doesn't it? Where sometimes it takes someone from the outside with a fresh outside perspective to come in and point out the growth potential, the opportunities, the advantages that are right in front of our nose that we've gotten so used to that we take for granted and that we overlook when really it's the source of our true growth potential. That's why the second step in the decision process is to consult an anti-you. Consult an anti-you. A while back, my wife and I moved from San Diego to Minneapolis. And in the span of 3 months, my 55-year-old father barely survived a massive heart attack. We moved across country. We bought our first home. Our first child was born, a beautiful baby boy named Ruben, who slept an average of 27 minutes a night the first 6 months he was alive. And in addition to all of this, true to form, right smack dab in the middle of this onslaught of change, I had a falling apple moment. I hatched the idea that became my first book deal with a major publisher. So Simon & Schuster had taken a look at my proposal, which is really just a fancy name for a glorified outline. And they said, you know, we love it, it looks great. Now you have 6 months to turn this outline into a 256-page book, which of course I've never done before. Now, I don't want to sound ungrateful. These are all brilliant, beautiful life experiences that I'm immensely grateful for. But to say that this was a stressful period in my life would be the understatement of the year. So I did what all good, red-blooded American consumers know is the best way to cure stress. I went shopping. Only I didn't just buy a new pair of jeans or a new pair of shoes or a new drill or something. I bought this. Now that there is an RV, my RV to be specific. And this was a colossally bad decision on a number of levels. Not the least of which because we moved into the city of Minneapolis. There's no place to park a 31.5-foot monstrosity. Or because I'd never driven a motorhome before in my entire life. But the biggest reason why this was a bad decision is because it moved me in the exact opposite direction of my personal decision pulse. So just like every team and every organization has a decision pulse, so do we as individuals. But the screwy thing is, I knew, even back then, I knew exactly what my pulse was. It was freedom. I care more about freedom than power, prestige, achievement, money, safety, security. I wanted freedom. But in my stressed out, judgment clouded state of mind, all I could think about is what would spell freedom more than cruising down the old American highway with everything I own behind me on 2 axles. Of course, in reality, it just created obligation after obligation after obligation. Now, after I discovered a little while later that perhaps my RV was a bit of a breakfast sandwich that I needed to get rid of, I sold it. And when I did, the funniest thing happened. I had people coming out of the woodwork, my friends, my family members, my sister, my brothers, my parents, my wife, saying, yeah, I couldn't believe it when you bought that thing to begin with. What were you thinking? And I'm like, well, Helpy Helperton, where was that great advice before I bought the RV? And you know I didn't get that advice, right? Any guesses?
Yeah.
Because I didn't ask for it. In the last 4 decades, behavioral economists have uncovered hundreds of predictable biases, irrational quirks of the human mind that cause otherwise intelligent people to betray their own best interests. But at the same time, psychologists have also uncovered 5 to 6 proven, empirically validated ways of shifting our thinking from system 1, emotional, impulsive, illogical thinking, to system 2, rational, calculating, logical thinking. And they're very simple techniques like consider the opposite, take an outsider's perspective. Pretend that a friend came to you with this decision. What advice would you give back to them? Actually, go get a second opinion. And I've just thrown them all into one catch-all strategy that I simply call consulting an anti-you. And all that really means is after you've checked your pulse, but before you make the decision, check in with somebody who's not you. It doesn't even have to be somebody smarter than you, because God knows for many of us in this room today, it's almost impossible to find someone smarter than you, right? It just has to be somebody who's not bringing your emotions, your biases, your prejudices into the situation. After nearly half a century of global toy industry dominance, the Lego group found itself in serious financial trouble. Costs had soared, sales were way down. 6 to 9-year-old boys, their bread and butter demographic, all of a sudden woke up one day and decided they were more interested in video games than Lego bricks. It was as if the world had changed almost overnight on Lego's managers. So just a year into his new job as CEO, a 36-year-old wonderkin named Youre sprung into action and immediately started strategizing. And as he would tell the story later, one night he's having dinner with his highly experienced CFO, and he's telling him about his plan. He said, I must have had 8 different proposals for what to do about operations, 7 different proposals for how to fix innovation, another 7 proposals for what to do about market share, and so forth and so on. That in total, I must have had 50 to 60 proposed actions on the table. And Jesper, that's the CFO, Jesper just looks at me and he says, the way you describe the company and the way I understand this situation, this is never going to happen. Your plan is way too complex. And that single anti-you perspective ended up taking those 50 to 60 actions and translating it into one simple number, 13.5%. Every current product and every new proposed product in the Lego universe had to show a clear path to 13.5% return on sales, where it was cut, killed, tweaked, deprioritized, or put on the back burner. And this was exactly the kind of foothold, the kind of clarity that Lego's managers needed to get themselves back on the path to growth, to shake them out of their old ways of thinking and focus their attention and their innovation and their creativity and their brainstorming. And it all began with an incredibly bright, talented leader humbling himself just enough to check in with somebody else about what his proposed action was going to be, about what should be the next step. So, do you have a decision that you're thinking about right now? Of course you do, right? You're leaders. Research shows that leaders make an average of 115 decisions every single day. Whether to have a chicken sandwich or a kale salad for lunch today. Whether to hire this person or that person. Whether to pursue this growth goal in 2022 or that growth goal. Whatever that decision is that's on your mind, think about who is it that you could consult? Who is it that could give you that fresh outside perspective? Who is it that could maybe point out that community member, that colleague sitting here with you today They can maybe point out the growth potential that's right under your nose that you can't see. Who's going to be your anti-you? I want to give you another little pro tip here. So the main reason for consulting an anti-you is to get that fresh outside perspective. But it's a phenomenal opportunity to inspire a growth mindset in the people around you, in your teammates, and in your community members. Studies show that one of the quickest and easiest ways to increase somebody's confidence and courage and overall growth capacity is to ask them for their advice. Simplest thing you can do. And when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because when I ask you for your advice, it sends a clear message that says, I think you're smart. I think you have good ideas. I think you have untapped growth potential that I want to tap into. There is no easier way to empower the people who work with you and for you than to ask them for their advice. Now, having said all that, that doesn't mean that they get to make the decision for you. So sometimes I have to clarify that. You're still the decision maker, but you're getting a new way of seeing things, and it's going to shape the eventual choice that you make, but ultimately it's your choice. So at the point of in every decision process, you're going to reach a point after you've checked your pulse, after you've consulted an anti-you, where you simply have to make a call, where calculation and consultation has to give way to courage and action, in spite of the uncertainty, in spite of the unknown, in spite of the possibility of failure. You simply have to make a decision. The question is, what do you do when you reach that point and you still aren't sure what to do? That's why the third step in the decision process is to rent the RV. Rent the RV. Instead of making one very big, very costly decision to buy an RV, I could have just as easily made one very small decision to take just a small amount of time and a small amount of money and rent an RV. And had I done that, I very quickly would have learned some really important lessons, such as how bad I was at driving it. What a terribly inconvenient time in my life this was for enjoying it. And perhaps most importantly of all, how completely and totally disinterested my wife would be in owning it. Yeah, I mean, think about our towers up here, right? They weren't built by thinking about stacking blocks. They weren't built by creating a detailed 10-year plan for stacking blocks. They were built by people actually stacking blocks in spite of the uncertainty, testing, failing sometimes, succeeding at other times, learning at all times. So the whole point of Rent the RV is it's all about starting small before betting big. It's not about trusting your gut, it's about testing your gut, testing your instincts, and starting small. I want to show you something here to illustrate this.
Everybody knows about playing with dominoes, but what you may not know is that a domino can knock over another domino, which is about 1.5 times larger. What I have here is a chain of dominoes. Each one is 1.5 times larger than the previous one. And the smallest domino is about 5 millimeters high and 1 millimeter thick. And I will carefully place it. And there are 13 dominoes. And the largest domino, it weighs about 100 pounds and is more than 1 meter tall. Ready? Ooh. That was 13 dominoes. If I had 29 dominoes, the last domino would be as tall as the Empire State Building.
Folks, what's true for physics is true for leadership. When you think big, Empire State Building size big, but you start exceptionally, exceedingly small, anything is possible. Anything is possible. To paraphrase the great scholar and sage, Doc Brown from Back to the Future, where Itasca County's economy is going, there are no roads. Okay, there's not a single person in this room today, in the state of Minnesota, on planet Earth, who knows exactly where Itasca County is going or exactly where Itasca County should go. But if every leader in this room can summon the humility to acknowledge that fact, to accept that fact that we can't know the unknowable, while simultaneously summoning the courage to make decisions anyway, to keep testing, keep experimenting, keep failing, and keep deciding, then anything is possible. Small decisions will produce big results. Before I let you go here, I want to share one last idea with you. In Judeo-Christian cultures, like the one I grew up in, and like many of you probably grew up in as well, we have this ancient story of a guy named Jonah. And the gist of the story is that one day the Almighty God calls down to Jonah and asks him to go lead a bunch of people to salvation. Well, the problem is Jonah's not a fan of these people. In fact, he pretty much despises them. So in response to this call from the universe, Jonah says, you know what, I'm good, actually. But if I change my mind, you'll be the first to know. But in the meantime, don't call me, I'll call you, okay? So he then proceeds to hop the first pleasure cruise he can find, headed anywhere but there. Well, the problem is when they get out on the open seas, the seas get dangerously rough. And the ship's crew determines that, well, basically the reason why is because Jonah, the yellow-bellied coward, angered the gods somehow. So being the good team players that they are, they decide to chuck him overboard. Only Jonah doesn't drown. He, luckily, gets swallowed by a whale. And down there in the belly of the whale, Jonah has some little bit of me time, some time for some self-reflection. And he starts asking himself some questions like, who am I? Where am I going? Am I giving this whale indigestion? And after a few days, the whale spits Jonah out onto the shore, and Jonah finally decides to let go of his doubts, put on his big boy pants, and go be the leader he was called to be. Every human culture has a version of this same story, where some change event sends the hero off to a lonely mountain, out into the desert, into a cave, or in the case of Luke Skywalker, off to some forbidding planet. It's the same thing that happened to Mulan, to Shrek, to Neo, to Simba, to Bilbo Baggins, to Iron Man, to Wonder Woman, to Bill Murray and Groundhog Day. It is the origin story for every superhero there is. And do you know why that is? Because it's there in the belly of the whale where ordinary people discover that they have extraordinary capabilities. You have spent the last 18 months inside the belly of the whale, and you're about to get spit out onto the shore. Stronger, faster, smarter, wiser than you've ever been before. So whatever your big dream is for your community, for your team, for your life, trust me when I say there is no better time than right now to begin making that dream come to life, to begin actualizing that dream about which you've been fantasizing. And all it takes to get started is to make the next small decision in front of you, and the next, and the next, and the next. And one decision at a time, you can channel your fear into focus. One decision at a time, you can transform your doubts into determination. One decision at a time, you can flip a turbulent time period into an exciting adventure. One decision at a time, you can have a blast over the next 2 days with your colleagues in this room right here today. All it takes is one decision at a time. One decision at a time. Thank you guys all so much. I appreciate your time. That's all I got. Thank you. No, it's okay. Does anyone have any questions? I don't want to dismiss you before. Everybody good? Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you so much, Nick. That was an amazing way to start today. We are so thrilled that we have a room full of decision makers, a room full of invigorated humans this morning that are super excited to start to make a path forward for our community. So we have one or two more housekeeping quick items. We have folks that have not registered should check in at the front desk. If you also have not received your room key, you can check in at the front desk. We just ask that you don't go to your rooms until noon. The rooms will be ready, all the rooms will be ready at noon. Also, for those of you that are wondering if you have questions about this afternoon or your agendas that are included in your packets, you can check in with myself or Kayla at the front desk on any of those details. But other than that, we're going to take a short recess break. There are snacks in the lobby so we can separate the rooms for our sessions. The session for economic development will be in this space. The session for innovation, entrepreneurship, and workforce will be in the back half of the room. And then the session for community development will be in the dining room just down the hall. Thanks, everyone.